to the outside world. But we've always known that two people can go through the same incident and come out feeling very differently about what happened. And the question is, how does that work? And so they began to develop these processes of being able to take people through and change that internal representation. The beginning definition of NLP was, it's the study of the structure of subjective experience. Okay, so you need to unpack that a little bit. It's about, you have this internal experience, that something's happening, how do you internalize it? So, for example, what kind of pictures are you making inside? What sounds are there? Are there voices? Are there other kinds of sounds? Where does the feeling, come to you? Is it in the chest, at the stomach, someplace? And what happens if you change the picture? What happens if you change the sound? What would happen if you were to move the feeling from the stomach to the chest, or to move the feeling from the stomach to the shoulder? And they found out that people could do that. That the brain is capable of doing that. In fact, the brain loves those kinds of things, but you have to do it quickly. The brain learns very, very quickly. Most phobias are learned in a single incident and in almost an instant. It goes something like this, the one about heights. Little kids walking along in the park, and there's a ravine, and he walks over to look over to the ravine, and some adult grabs him by the arm and says, "Watch out, you're going to fall," and jerks him back. So he has this picture of the ravine. He has this kinesthetic feeling of the jerking of the arm, and this loud voice telling him it's scary. And his brain learns to respond the same way the little kid did every time he looks over the edge of something. And so if you can learn to do it, you ought to be able to learn. This is a Moshe Feldenkrais thing too. If you're able to do it, you ought to be able to undo it. Moshe said, if I remember correctly, something about any kind of movement that you make ought to be able to be unmade or reversed.
To be reversible, right?
Right.
To be reversible. And as you're speaking, also, I'm thinking about the map.
Exactly.
That what you're really doing is remapping the experience in another part of yourself. I want you to talk a little bit more about this idea that the brain is very quick. You have to be very quick because I think that's an important key thing.
Yeah. So when somebody comes in and they've got this particular picture, that's one of the things that's important about NLP is that if you come in and say, "I've been traumatized, I don't need to know what happened. I want to know, where's the picture stored? What's the sound?" And then I want to take you through a process that'll change it just like that. Mm-hmm. And it has to be quickly. When the psychiatrist learned about the phobia cure, it's got about 4 steps, and they'll do the first 2 steps in one session and the second 2 steps in the next session, and couldn't quite figure out how come it never worked for them. Well, that's because, it has to happen quickly. So, because it has to do with the intensity that makes the change in the neural pathways. That's the language we use about it, is that the brain learns that when this stimuli comes up, I have a new neural pathway to go to. Does that make sense? But my brain has always responded in a certain way when when my mother yells at me in this particular voice, I have an internal response. And what we would do is help them change that very quickly to a different kind of response.